Today, Joe Biden drops out of the presidential race. The World Court says Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory is illegal, and Bangladesh's Supreme Court acts after a wave of deadly protests. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Monday the 22nd of July, 2024. Yesterday, President Joe Biden announced that he was withdrawing from the presidential race and opted not to seek a second term as President of the United States. This came as no surprise to many American politicos, as the president had faced weeks of resistance to his candidacy following his CNN debate performance against former President Trump, which raised concerns about his mental acuity and ability to effectively mount a winning campaign. In his statement, Biden said it had been an honour, but was in the best interest of his party and country to end his campaign, adding that he'll speak later this week in more detail about his decision. That decision for an incumbent president not to seek re-election is a rare one in American politics, with the last being Lyndon Johnson in 1968. However, what differentiates Biden's situation from the rest is that he had already accumulated nearly all of the delegates to become the presumptive nominee for his party, and no major presidential candidate has ever withdrawn this late in the race in modern American history. That being said, there does appear to be a clear frontrunner to take Biden's place: Vice President Kamala Harris. Biden, after his withdrawal, immediately endorsed Harris, and many of the Democratic Party elite and high-profile lawmakers have also decided to support her. This includes Democratic power brokers like Jim Clyburn and the Clintons, progressives such as AOC and Ilhan Omar, and potential rivals like Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer. Some Democratic state delegations, including Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina, have already announced that Harris will receive all of their state's delegates at the Democratic Convention in August. So far, Vice President Harris is running unopposed in the nominating process, and it's safe to say that the longer Vice President Harris remains the uncontested nominee, the harder it will be to take that away from her. There have also been rumours that West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin may re-register as a Democrat and enter into the race. However, he likely has not won over many supporters due to his opposition to Biden and his domestic agenda. Donald Trump, the Republican nominee for president, reacted by saying that Harris would be easier to beat than Biden, and complained that Biden dropping out hindered his campaign strategy and operations. He also put into doubt whether he would debate Vice President Harris if she were to become the Democratic Party's nominee. It was no secret that Trump and his campaign wanted Biden to remain in the race. However, with his withdrawal, it throws everything into flux. Trump has so far led Harris in polling, but many have it within the margin of error. All in all, US politics has been on a wild ride these past couple of weeks, and with Biden dropping out, the next weeks and months will likely continue that trend. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support the channel like Nordwind, then consider joining the new TLDR membership program for just $1.99. The world's highest court, the International Court of Justice, or ICJ, issued a damning advisory opinion on Friday, declaring that Israel's ongoing occupation of the Palestinian territories is illegal, as are its settlements in said territories, adding that Israel should withdraw as rapidly as possible. The sweeping condemnation of Israeli policy in the territories that it occupied since 1967, i.e. the West Bank and Gaza, including East Jerusalem, came in the form of a non-binding advisory opinion, and the case was initiated by the UN General Assembly back in December 2022, predating the ongoing war in Gaza. The court, in justifying its position, pointed to a long list of Israeli policies, including the expansion of Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, the confiscation of land and exploitation of natural resources, the forced displacement of and discriminatory policies against Palestinian populations, and more, in breach of international law. The court said that Israel is under an obligation to end its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory as rapidly as possible, and that other states are obliged not to render aid or assistance in maintaining the current situation. During the hearings for the case, Israel chose not to send a legal team, opting only to submit written comments. Following the court's pronouncement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denounced it, saying that the Palestinian territories are part of the Jewish people's homeland, and that the Jewish nation cannot be an occupier in its own land. Meanwhile, the Israeli Foreign Ministry rejected the court's opinion as fundamentally wrong. Bangladesh's Supreme Court has scaled back a controversial quota system for government jobs, delivering a partial victory for student protesters after days of deadly unrest in the nation. The protests and demonstrations, led by students, had demanded an end to the quota that reserved 30% of government jobs for relatives of veterans who fought for Bangladesh's independence in 1971. The nationwide protests last week spiraled into clashes between demonstrators and security forces that killed at least 139 people. The unrest prompted an internet shutdown, a curfew, and the closure of universities. The Supreme Court on Sunday largely scrapped the 30% quota system, deciding that 93% of government jobs should be decided on merit, the veterans' quota should be cut to 5%, and 2% should be set aside for minority groups. There appeared to be calm in Bangladesh on Monday, though the curfew was still in place and internet services still disrupted. Student protesters, however, say they will continue their protests until their detained leaders are released, the curfew is lifted, and universities reopened, ultimately giving the government 48 hours to meet their demands. The Associated Press writes that the protesters posed the most serious challenge to Bangladesh's government since Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina won a fourth consecutive term in January this year. Described as once Bangladesh's democracy icon, Hasina has overseen an increasingly authoritarian regime. China and the Philippines have struck a tentative deal described as a provisional arrangement to lower tensions surrounding a disrupted reef in the South China Sea, which has become a flashpoint for confrontations between the two countries. The Chinese Foreign Ministry confirmed that it would allow Philippine resupply missions to the Sierra Madre, an old warship deliberately grounded by the Philippines on 2nd Thomas Shoal in 1999 to reinforce its territorial claim to the reef that's now home to a handful of Filipino Marines. However, in its remarks confirming the deal, China reiterated its sovereignty claim and its demand that the Philippines remove the ship, and also said it would supervise each resupply mission. The Philippine effort to resupply the rusting warship have been at the centre of the recent confrontation with China, as the Chinese Coast Guard, which claims 2nd Thomas Shoal as part of its own maritime territory, has repeatedly disrupted and attempted to block the resupply missions, using rammings, water cannons, and even a laser. The Philippine Foreign Affairs Ministry said that both sides continue to recognise the need to de-escalate the situation in the South China Sea and manage differences through dialogue and consultation, and agree that the agreement will not prejudice each other's position in the South China Sea. In the final uplifting story today, we discuss the use of AI in detection of cancer. A new AI detection tool that has been used at GP practices in the UK, called See the Signs, has increased the cancer detection rate from 58.7% to 66% in the practices that use the software. It works by analysing the patient's medical history, test results, prescriptions, treatment, age, and family history to suggest whether they should have additional tests conducted. In total, See the Signs is used in 1,400 GP practices in England, roughly 15% of total practices, and was tested in 35 practices in England in May 2021. If you want to learn more, then check out our physical magazine, Too Long. We've been working on this for a while now, but it's about to be printed and shipped. So here's everything you need to know. Too Long is 60 pages of our very best journalism, diving deeper into issues than we can on YouTube. As you can see from the front cover, this issue is focused on the UK general election, explaining what Labour want to do with their new huge majority, what each of the other parties are going to do next, and much more. It's more than just the UK though, with major stories from across Europe and the world, including the US election, the countries who could join the EU, the war in Gaza, and the European elections. We're really proud of how this product has turned out, and we think it's some of our best writing yet, able to dive into topics in a way that the algorithm just wouldn't allow. It's also a great way to support the channel. With the cost of production only increasing as we expand and advertising markets getting less stable, your support helps us improve the business, improve our journalism, and helps us make more free YouTube content for everyone. If you're interested, you can go to toolong.news to buy a copy. There you'll find both standard and premium editions of the magazine, with the premium edition getting your name printed in the thank you section and getting you access to our behind the scenes podcast, The Bullpen. Premium editions will only be available until Thursday at 11 AM, when the print run begins, so you don't have long. You can also subscribe to Too Long, which gets you 25% off the price and a copy sent straight to you every 4 months. Subscribing really helps us turn this into a reliable revenue stream, which is super helpful when it comes to growing our business. Plus, if physical isn't your thing, then there's also digital versions. Anyway, sales close soon, so head to toolong.news to order now, and make sure to use code FINALORDERS to get an extra £2 off your purchase. Thanks for watching and for supporting TLDR.